Why is Smackdown so boring? I am Luke, and this is Randy, Andy Datson, and welcome to the WrestleTalk podcast review of this week's episode of Smackdown, which was fine, I guess.
It was totally fine, Luke, but yes, it has been the same show for months now. And I am no more excited for Money in the Bank than I was yesterday. Before having watched the show, it just didn't really build anything. There was no moment in the show that made me think, "Oh wow, now I can't wait for sort of these two to collide." Because you had a sort of blow-off match with Sonya Deville and Mandy Rose. I know it wasn't the blow-off match. I know they're going to have several matches. But a lame roll-up felt a bit dull. And the rest of the show just kind of happened. And it finished with a very short six-man tag.
You got nothing else done. Yeah, you
haven't really been paying attention that much recently.
It's weird because...
you haven't. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's weird because way back when, like a couple of years ago, when I first started on this channel and I was doing the Smackdown review, so like my first year or so of like doing this full time, I got quite a bit of heat on this channel because I would often say that Smackdown is a good show, but it's not a newsworthy show. Like people used to like have a real bugbear against my sort of my hot take on Smackdown, which was it's good, but it's unimportant. And people would argue it's just like, well, at least it's a good show. And I'm like, yeah, cool, it's fine, it's a good show, but there's nothing to talk about coming out of it. Like I would come into the office to try and think of something to have as a headline for a video and then find a secondary headline for a podcast review as well. And I'm like, bloody hell, there's barely anything to talk about now. And while I think that SmackDown has often been the better show than Raw, at least Raw has always had something to talk about. Like even if when Raw is great, there is something to talk about. When Raw is awful, there is something to talk about. When Raw is bland, there is something to talk about. But with SmackDown, for whatever reason it is, there's never really anything to talk about coming out of the shows. And I think since the move to Fox, it's got even worse. The show is, as you said then, it's the same show week in and week out. And I'm watching it this morning, and when it finished, I thought, what was the point? Like, what was the point of me watching this show? Because nothing happens.
Yeah, every Saturday for the last couple of months, I've been having conversations with Pete every morning going, what are we going to call this show? And we've gone, oh, what haven't we talked about? Okay, so we'll talk about the hacker. Oh, but there's nothing really to talk about the hacker because it doesn't really matter who it is now. Because it's going to be Ali or it's going to be Shorty G, and then they're going to get a 3-week push. Okay, well, right, now what? Now what can we talk about? Because we've talked about that. Oh, Tamina's getting a bit of a push, but no one cares about Tamina. And we just sort of run out. And today we were like, oh, well, we could talk about Corbin. Oh, no, we don't want to do that. I'll talk about the hacker. No, we've done that before. Oh, I mean, I guess we just talk about why it's not interesting.
I just feel that it's a nothing happening show. And I do put some of the blame on that at the feet of Bruce Pritchard because like he is a guy. So Attitude Era podcast recently did a review for their Patreon backers. They recently did a review of Kane's autobiography. And Kevin made the excellent point in that Kane was the perfect creation of minds coming together because you had the long-term storytelling of Jim Cornette, you had the fantastic VHS video rental store movie-loving Vince Russo, and you had Bruce Pritchard, who knows what Vince will say yes to. And so, like, he is, of those three, he's the one who could just go like, well, Vince won't like that, but he will like this. Bruce knows what Vince will just say yes to. And so it's eventually found a show that Vince will say yes to and just pitches that same show every week because he'll know Vince will say yes to it.
Well,
it feels like there's no creative direction that we're moving in.
it's just sort of like it's built around one thing that like, oh, Vince is going to love this. So what we'll do is we'll weaken the bottom two rungs of this ladder because Otis is quite. I don't know if you noticed, but Otis is fat, so he'll break the ladder despite being actually the same weight as like Kane, who's actually won the Money in the Bank, because he's a bit rounder. If we make Vince laugh once, we'll get away with it, and the rest of the show can be whatever we like. And as long as Corbin is standing tall at the end, who cares what happens? I don't know if you noticed, but Corbin has a brand new vortex because Sami Zayn has been off TV for a bit.
Yeah, I did spot his new mid card last week.
But as you can see, we're sort of rambling because there wasn't really anything to talk about. We're just kind of talking about bits and pieces from the show. And it's been the same for weeks now. I mean, Pete and I kind of start beforehand thinking, right, okay, well, we don't want to be too negative about it because we don't want to sit here and just rag on SmackDown. But when you watch a show like that, where you come out of it going, well, nothing new is happened. That didn't, like, that was the go home show for one of your big five. I know it's unusual circumstances, but Raw has been telling stories on a Monday, and SmackDown has been giving us the same, like, variations of the same four people having one match. So it's very confusing.
And the other reason why I was like, because like you, I don't want to be, I mean, I'm sure we'll get like the you guys just hate everything sort of comments that people already will have left, even though we're only about sort of 5 minutes into the show, but they will have left them within 10 seconds. Yeah. But the other thing that kind of struck me about this when I was coming out of it, and it kind of hit me when I was doing my predictions for Money in the Bank. My predictions for Money in the Bank are both Raw winners. I've got AJ Styles to win the men's and Nia Jax to win the women's. And when I was coming up with, like, you know, who I thought, I instantly just discredited all of the SmackDown participants. I was like, there's no way Corbin's winning. Daniel Bryan's probably not going to win. And I don't think it's going to be Otis either. And then it's even worse on the women's side of things. Dana Brooke sure as hell isn't winning. Carmella's definitely not winning. Lacey Evans is probably the only one who might win. But then you actually look at the build for Money in the Bank on the women's side of it on this show, it's non-existent. Carmella and Dana could have pants promo, and Lacey was in a tag match with nothing to do with the Money in the Bank ladder match. So they don't feel important in that match.
No. And I mean, Dana and Carmella have been having that promo backstage for weeks. They're like, oh, we're best friends. Like, no, you're not. When has that ever been a thing? You suddenly just turn up, oh, we're blonde. And therefore we're best friends. But I honestly can't remember who I went for. I think I've gone for AJ Styles and Shayna Baszler because I thought that was safe.
But again, they're both Raw talents.
They're both Raw talents because no one's been built on SmackDown. The only person who I think might win on the SmackDown side of things for the men is Baron Corbin, just because they might just be lazy and go, oh, who's a heel? All right, Baron Corbin. But then I can't see Baron Corbin cashing in on the Fiend. I think that'd be really weird.
Or Braun Strowman, for that matter.
I could see it more on Braun Strowman, but then we'd have to have a Baron Corbin Braun Strowman feud, which no one wants to see. So I think it's got to be, I think Drew is much more susceptible to being cashed in on by someone like AJ Styles, and I want to see that feud. I don't want to see any of the people on SmackDown have a feud with Baron, or have a feud with the top star on SmackDown.
But also, like, the Raw guys have all got something going in. Like, AJ Styles is coming off the back of that Undertaker loss, and he feels like a more vicious style of AJ Styles now. Also, he feels like a legit main eventer. Got Aleister Black, who has been very dominating on Raw in his matches, and it almost feels like he's on the cusp of a main event push. And you've got Rey Mysterio, who has got this, like, career-long storyline that he's going into this, being like, you know, the promo he got on Monday, which is that I'm closer to the end of my career than I am to the beginning. There's some, like, character and depth to those three people going in. And you look on the SmackDown side of things, like, well, Corbin is the most mid-card of mid-card. Like, there's that character, that gimmick is not world title. It's not Blue Universal Championship material. And neither is Otis. As much as we love Otis, and Otis is great, Otis does not scream Blue Universal Champion at the moment. And that just leaves Bryan. And Bryan is pretty much the only credible person on the SmackDown side.
Yeah, and you could, but like he's had 2 feuds with the Fiend in the last few months, and if we're right in thinking that the Fiend's going to win it back, I mean, I don't know what your opinion is, but
Braun's 100% winning at Money in the Bank.
Oh, you think?
Oh, what? He's facing Bray. He's not winning.
Okay, he's not facing the Fiend. All right. Well, and then you've got Otis, and I can't see Otis with a briefcase cashing in on Braun or Bray. That would just be really weird. Which probably means it's going to happen. But yeah, like you said, there are 3 storylines going into this, and none of them are on the SmackDown side. So yeah, it's a shame, but I think both sides of the coin, you're going to have a Raw winner.
So the really only other interesting thing to talk about this, and I know you sort of alluded to it earlier that there isn't much more to say, is on the Smackdown Hacker, because that character we figure is going to be revealed at Money in the Bank. And they had a segment on this show where they sort of showed clips of Big E winning the tag titles. They showed Tamina getting a win or something, and they showed a couple of other sort of bits and bobs from SmackDown, and then played a clip that said what was it, like the truth will be heard or something.
Yeah, that's his catchphrase.
No, there was another thing they said. I'm gonna have to get my notes up now. What was the thing that they said? Payback is coming, and it's coming real soon. Yes, but interestingly, it was a female voice that was in the clip.
So yeah, every week they've done a new voice to try and, I guess, hide the identity. And like, there's been some people on Twitter who use some kind of software to kind of get out all the interference to find out who it is. And like, there's one week where it sounded a lot like Mustafa Ali, one week where it sounded a lot like Xavier Woods. So I think they are just going to different talent saying, can you just record this for us? But I think the only people it makes sense to be are either Shorty G or Mustafa Ali. But one thing that the hacker has shown for several weeks now is Big E, which, I mean, Pete wants it to be true. Or doesn't want it to be true, but Pete thinks that this is going to be the start of a Big E heel turn because the New Day needs to break up, according to everyone. And I just, it is weird that they keep they're looking at the Bayley storyline of Sasha Banks, which we all know is going to end up in a heel turn from one side, and they keep showing Big E, which might be just a red herring, but it does feel like, I mean, Big E won the belt on his own, so maybe he now thinks he's better than the rest of the New Day.
Yeah, I mean, if this leads to the breakup of the New Day, I'm going to be very, very disappointed, and I think that would be a fool's errand. I think that would be a foolish move. But it's probably the one thing I don't think a lot of people have really given much consideration to, because as you say, like the 3 names that keep getting bounded around are Xavier Woods, Mustafa Ali, Chad Gable, and then more recently CM Punk because of that tweet. But I very much doubt that it's CM Punk. I think that is a long shot if there ever was one. But if I was swinging for the fences, because I thought about this and I was like, I'm going to have a quick look. I'm going to one of my favorite Wikipedia pages for when I used to do fantasy booking warfares, which was list of WWE personnel on Wikipedia, because you can find that's the easiest place to find out who is on what roster. And I thought I would have a look at the lady folk side of things.
Oh.
And I'm going to swing for the fence here. I'm going to say the hacker is Ember Moon.
That's not a bad shout. I thought you were going to say the Iconics or something for a second. Yeah. That's not a bad shout at all. If they're going to go for a lady wrestler, I think Ember Moon's the only logical person. Is Ember Moon on SmackDown?
According to list of WWE personnel on Wikipedia, she is still listed.
I'll trust you.
But she did she was on backstage at some point late last year where she said she was out indefinitely with an Achilles injury. But I'm going to say it's a work, and that she is going to be revealed. It's going to be the big shock that no one's going to see coming, the big swerve. The hacker will be revealed as Ember Moon, and that will be the start of a new character for her.
Well, there is a suspicion going around that despite Dana Brooke being heavily advertised for this Money in the Bank match, that she won't actually be in the Money in the Bank match. Adam Lombier, for example, put forward that she's going to be attacked by Sasha Banks before the match, and Sasha Banks will actually win the briefcase, which I think is a good shout, because I think that could be a good story with Bayley. But a lot of people seem to think that, Dana's not going to be actually in the match because she's so disposable, unfortunately. Like, if Dana Brooke wasn't in this match and you didn't even say that, and it just finished the match like that, I probably wouldn't notice that Dana Brooke hadn't been in the match. But I know, I'm sorry, Dana, but I find her character uninteresting, even though she has improved massively since being Charlotte Flair's protege. But we've been talking
10 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. We've been talking for 15 minutes about not anything in particular.
Well, I mean, that's because we're going to go through the run through of the show now, and because I don't think it's going to take very long for us to
probably
run through this show. It kicked off with Mandy Rose versus Sonya Deville. Fine match, very shouty. They were working over each other's vocal cords, I think, for the majority
They really
of this.
were. And despite Mandy Rose having a giant bandage on her leg, I think Sonya Deville kicked it twice. So that wasn't particularly good heel work, but I'm just surprised there was no interference whatsoever, and it was just a roll-up win with a couple of spots outside the ring. I think there was some knees there. I mean, they're really putting over Sonya as the bad guy here because it's a jealous, obsessed attack, I think Michael Cole called it. Even though everything Sonya Deville's said, you've gone, yeah, she's got a point.
There's always the best kind of heels. I thought it was funny when Michael Cole said that she stole a victory. I'm like, not really. Like, she won very much within the rules of the match.
Yeah, I mean, there was one moment in the match where I was kind of like, oh, that's a cool throwback, because it was when Sonya was peeling off Mandy's eyelashes, which I don't know. I'm not a lady or someone who wears fake eyelashes, so I don't know if that hurts very much. But Mandy Rose actually did this to Alexa Bliss either last year or the year before. Time is one thing now, but so that was quite fun to see the sort of the reversal of that spot. And I guess it's the whole thing is like, oh, you're just this pretty girl who has fake whatever and you wear eyelashes and things like that, so I'm gonna expose you for who you are. Look, your eyelashes are shorter. I've got you. So cool. Yeah, but it was a roll up in probably, I'd say 6 or 7 minutes, maybe, the match. So I'm like, oh, right. Well, that doesn't make me want to watch another one of these matches. But I think we're going to have 8 or 9 of them.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is not certainly the end of this feud. It is sort of just the start of it. It's not the hottest of starts, but it is a start. I think the 8-man tag that we got next was easily the best thing on the show.
Yes, it was good fun.
New Day and Lucha House Party versus the Forgotten Sons and Miz and Morrison. I mean, you said at the start of this that nothing on the show really got you excited for Money in the Bank. I would argue that this match did get me excited for their match at Money in the Bank.
Yeah,
because,
fair enough.
The chaotic nature of the finish did make me go like, oh, actually, like, I'm quite looking forward to seeing these 4 have a match on Sunday. I don't think it's going to go massively long or anything, and it won't be anything that's like, it won't be any match of the year contenders or anything like that. But I do think it will be some amount of fun, and I think I'll get a bit of a kick out of it. The Miz got the win by pinning Lince Dorado with the skull-crushing finale. Lots of dives, lots of Dorado getting some near falls, lots of spike runners in this match as well. Poor Morrison landed on his head a heck of a lot. Yeah,
no, I enjoyed the match. There were lots of nice spots, lots of splashes. Did you notice when Big E went to slap? Which one's the bald one in Forgotten Sons?
Steve Cutler.
Steve Cutler. He doesn't lick his hand. He sort of rubbed his chin, because I guess they've been Biggie. You can't lick your hand at the moment, because that'll get everyone talking. So it was very chaotic, which I enjoy. I think that's going to be the kind of sort of the way it's going to go on Sunday as well, which is why I can sort of see someone just stealing a win and there being a surprise winner. I can see Forgotten Sons or even the Lucha House Party picking up a really shock win, just because it's going to be everyone is beating each other up and then it's going to finish with one person in the ring.
Yeah, exactly.
It was a cool match. Definitely the best match of the show. But then we were sort of came crashing back down to earth because we had a Baron Corbin promo backstage.
Yeah, didn't really say much of anything, just saying that he's going to win on Sunday.
It's kind of just going, king, 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 I'm the king. And you're like, right, okay, I've got your gimmick. So, yeah, says Otis is fat, Rey Mysterio could fly off the roof. But, yeah, it's just really depressing that just because Sami Zayn's been off TV, they've gone, oh, well, we've got Cesaro and Nakamura. Yeah, they're not very good, are they? Yeah, they've never proved that they're anything other than sort of mid-carders. So are we going to have to line them with Baron Corbin because they're all heels, which is quite depressing. But, yeah, I mean, Baron Corbin appears to have been feuding with Elias. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if Elias returns on Sunday. Is like, I don't know, I'm assuming there's some kind of recording studio in Titan Towers, so they'll, I don't know, run in there, and Elias will be sitting there playing some songs and whack Corbin with a guitar.
That was my prediction: is that Corbin is the one who's going to go off the roof, and it's going to be via Elias, because that was their build to WrestleMania, was Corbin pushing him off the sort of the crow's nest thing. So now Elias going to have his own "Long Live the King" moments of pushing him off the edge.
I'm just interested to see how they're going to sell this thing, because if someone falls off a roof, they're going like, are they dead?
Well, I mean, AJ Styles got buried and he's all right now.
That's true. But I'm just like, how long do you stay off TV after falling off a roof? I mean, I'd say at least a week. I mean, if it's Seth, he'll come back the next day with a bit of tape, going, "Oh man, that concrete from 500 feet, that really stings." But I'm all right. I'll do a Falcon Arrow.
So speaking of nothing really happening segments, we had Jeff Hardy's return, although he's already returned once this year. Sheamus was watching backstage. He came out and they had a bit of back and forth. I thought Jeff's comebacks were really lame.
Oh, Jeff is not a good talker.
Yeah, doing promos has never been Jeff's strong suit. And I think he came across quite lame during this. And then they had a brawl and Jeff stood tall. Not really much else to say.
Screamed with pain after hitting one swanton, I thought, which was a bit worrying. Did you know? I don't know if you saw, but there was this podcast that they interviewed, they kind of advertised this Heroes podcast, and it was the first time I've heard any commentator or anyone actually say the words COVID-19 on WWE TV. They said it's for the COVID-19 relief effort, and I was like, huh. So they're actually admitting that something's wrong now for the first time. But so that was just before this. But yeah, Jeff was lame. Sheamus looked a bit lame because all he's been doing is beating everyone up for weeks. And then as soon as he comes up against someone who isn't a jobber, he gets laid out. So
yeah. And I'm going to say as well, I know it's an unpopular opinion here on WrestleTalk, but I'm a fan of Jeff Hardy. I really like Jeff. And I really like Sheamus as well, but I just thought that Jeff just didn't come across particularly well. And as you say, like Sheamus just got completely laid out by him. But you know, I think that those two will have a half decent mid card feud.
Yes.
Braun and Bray had a face-to-face. Bray tried to get him to join his Firefly Funhouse again. Braun said no, he's going to win on Sunday, and then said, "See ya, bye."
Yes,
it was fine.
Yeah, well, Pete and I basically decided that Braun is a terrible actor. Bray's a brilliant actor, so it kind of levels out into it's fine. I don't know if this is going to be a cinematic match. Then I'll probably be more excited for it. But if it's just going to be a match in a ring, then I don't really want to watch this match.
I think that this will be a regular match because it's regular Bray. Braun gets the win, and then you build to the Fiend match after that. I think this is very much just a way to sort of extend out this feud. And really, but with the history between Braun and Bray, there's so much more meat to this story than they've really just scratched the surface on this.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to get a lot more of this. But I think the build for this feud has been fine. It's been okay. I just think that there's more to come, and I think the stuff that's going to come after Money in the Bank will probably be more exciting than what this has been.
Yes, absolutely. But then we got Otis backstage looking grumpy because Mandy lost, and then all night we've had a kind of Daniel Bryan and Drew Gulak and a partner of their choosing will be in the tag match. So we sort of see them approach Otis and go, oh, so you don't know if you heard what Baron Corbin said. Let's take a walk. And then later in the evening, we get the match, and I was obviously going to be Otis. And then Michael Cole goes, oh, well, Corey, you speculated that it might be Otis. And it's like, we saw it was Otis. We know it was Otis. But great stuff, Corey. Yeah, which I guess is I mean, as we've seen on Raw and SmackDown, they're just using the same 8 people for the entire show. So you kind of knew it was going to be Otis because he was there. It was either going to be Otis or Dolph Ziggler. I didn't think it was going to be Dolph Ziggler. So, yeah.
With another tag match, Sasha Banks and Bayley versus Tamina and Lacey Evans. Not really a lot to say about it. Tamina kicked out the Bayley to belly in the elbow drop and got the win, but it's impossible to take Tamina seriously as a title contender. Absolutely. Yeah. It's impossible to care about her as a challenger.
At least they've given her some kind of... In the last couple of weeks, they've given her a bit of personality. Like, she did this really cool thing last week where she was having a chat with Sasha Banks, and then suddenly she just turns around and just, like, sort of chokeholds Bayley, who no one knew was, like, saw coming, but it was almost like she had these sort of spidey senses. But yeah, the most notable thing about this match was the terrible graphics of Lacey Evans before the match.
The Lacey Evans AR, yeah. It is a total kill it with fire moment. I posted it in our Discord for our editors to have a look at, and it's just everyone going like, "Christ, that's so much worse than I thought it was going to be."
And then she comes out dressed like she works at a diner, which, I mean, I guess her gimmick is that she is from the 1940s.
I'm a big fan of Lacey Evans.
I'm a big fan of Lacey Evans. I really like her.
Like Lacey.
Yeah. She's definitely a future multi-time champion, but that AR was just so unnecessary.
So, I mean, my wife came into the office while I was kind of like getting some images together for Ollie's news, and I'd screen capped the Lacey thing, so it was on my second monitor. And my wife was just like, what the hell is that? And I was like, oh, yeah, they've got this thing called AR, which they think is really cool, but actually it's totally lame. She goes, that looks like it was made in the 1980s, which, for the record, was 40 years ago.
Oh, that's terrifying. Not that I was born in the 80s, but there you go. But yeah, no, it was rubbish. But there you go. They're not going to stop doing it. But in as you say, in 5 years, it's going to look so dated.
I mean, it looks dated now.
Yeah.
Dana and Carmella had those boring promos we talked about earlier. Then we got the hacker thing. And then we got the main event of King Corbin with his mid-card vortex, Shinsuke Nakamura and Cesaro versus Daniel Bryan, Drew Gulak, and, as you said earlier, Otis. Match didn't go that long. Corbin pinned Gulak with the deep 6. Then they sort of brawled around the ring with ladders. Otis broke one of the ladders by trying to stand on the rung. And Corbin was the one to stand tall, which 100% means he's not winning this Sunday.
Yeah, as soon as the ladder broke, as soon as that happened, I went, how heavy is Otis? He can't be that heavy because he's not very tall. He's 330 pounds. Kane is 328 pounds. So, I mean, perhaps 329 pounds is the limit of how much a ladder can take. But I mean, there was that famous spot where Big Show brought out his special reinforced ladder.
I think they're going to do that on Sunday as well.
But it's just, if you're pushing someone as a credible threat, and then you just go, hey, you're fat. It's just like, are there going to be ladders is he going to have to bring out a special ladder? Because, I mean, Corbin can't be that much shy of 300 pounds. I mean, there are other people in both matches.
I think you're giving this way too much thought, mate. I think they just thought it'd be funny to see the ladder rung do a break so that they can then do the reinforced ladder gimmick on during the match, which I think will be a fun little spot.
I'm sure it'll be funny, but it was just like, oh, all right, okay, yeah, he's fat.
So yeah, that was this week's SmackDown. I mean, on an average week, it was your everyday, like every week episode of SmackDown, which is broadly fine. And I don't even think you can use the argument that we're in these bizarre times where you've got limited rosters and things like that, because this has been the case all year long and really since the move to Fox. So it has always been a bland show for the last like 8 months. And this was just another bland edition of the show. But as a go-home show for Money in the Bank, I thought it was worse. I mean, I gave the show 2 out of 5. It's not like it's not the worst thing ever, but it's certainly 2 out of 5.
2.5. It was last week. Last week I may have given it a 3, but now that it's been the same show for 14 years, it's slowly going down.
Yeah. Right, well, that is all we've got time for this edition of the WrestleTalk podcast. Thank you very, very much for listening. And if you are in the mood to watch Money in the Bank with friends, why not join these friends? Me and Laurie are going to be live streaming our reactions to Money in the Bank this coming Sunday. We'll enable notifications on this channel to know when we go live and join along with us. It's always a lot of fun when we do the live reaction. So yeah, it's me and Laurie doing it, and then we'll be doing the podcast review the day after. So until then, please click the videos that have just appeared on screen right now to catch up with the latest WrestleTalk awesome things, and this button right here, which will make you a pledge hammer on Patreon, I believe, where you can join in Wrestle League predictions and yeah, all that other good fun stuff. I've been Luke Current. This has been Randy Andy Datson, and that was